Hello, my name's John Christensen. I'm the director of the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum located in Nevada City, California. We are a museum affiliated with Nevada County Historical Society, and our museum began in 1983. And when we started, we always like to say, when we started this project, we didn't have a wheel to turn. Now our museum is just loaded with equipment, and also our Nevada County engine number 5, which is the former Tahoe from the Carson and Tahoe Fluming company. Number 5 is making its operational debut. We're pretty excited to be here with all these other locomotives, a lot of famous locomotives. I understand this is the first time all 7 movie locomotives have been together in one spot.
I'm Amy. Came here with the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum. This is our Tahoe Engine 5. When I started volunteering with them just over a year ago, the engine was a frame and the front drive wheels and the blind drivers. And that was about it. It was disassembled, being rebuilt. I've been a train fan and into trains since I was about 8 years old. It's just great to be here with all the other engines and be celebrating and keep the history alive and hopefully get the next generation involved in steam as well.
So today, we have both the Tahoe and Glenbrook together again, and today both engines will be steaming up together for the first time since 1899, which is a historical event for these 2 locomotives.
Hi, my name is Alex Castro. I'm visiting the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Carson City for this year's Great Western Steam Up. I'm traveled from Sacramento, California, and I'm also a volunteer at the California State Railroad Museum and Placerville and Sacramento Valley Railroad. I am very excited to be part of this once-in-a-lifetime large gathering of steam engines. I've always wanted to participate in it, and here I am right now.
Good morning. I'm Les Wilmender with the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum. I'm also the owner of the Antelope Western No. 1. And we're firing up today to run at the Great Western Steam Up. And we're one of about 20 locomotives here today. We're here because the engine was built in 1889. And most of the engines here were all before 1900, which fits us very, very nicely. My family is the second owner of the locomotive. One of our first revenue trains we pulled was down at Ardenwood. We had a little three-car train, and we ran for their rail fare. I've made many, many trips with it. And she's been running ever since then.
Hey everybody, Mike Cohen and Patrick Cohen here at the Nevada State Railroad Museum for the Great Steam Up. We're down here to see some of this classic steam that is behind us. Some amazing locomotives and a truly remarkable collection of Nevada-based steam power. We're checking it out today. They're doing train rides. They're doing all kinds of stuff. So we're having a good time here. And I hope you were here, because by the time you see this, it'll be all done.
Hey everybody, I'm Nick Shareski. I work at the Nevada Northern Railway normally, but I come out here to this event to, I don't know, look around and foam a little bit, for lack of a better term. Visit some friends out here because we have some connections between museums, of course, and obviously seeing this many steam engines fired up at one time, it's gratifying to see. I enjoy seeing it. Also, there's a few engines here that I've not seen before, and get to talk to some people and learn more about them and all that. Anybody's interested in going out and riding the Nevada Northern, we've got all sorts of stuff going on. Bunch more events nowadays, and trying to keep it more public. So, yeah, by all means.
Hello, my name is Tom Gray. I'm the president of the current Virginia Truckee Railroad. My dad refounded it almost 50 years ago, actually. Railroad was originally built in 1869. Behind me is the locomotive 11, the Reno, built in 1872. We just purchased that from the old Tucson movie studios, where it's been almost 70 years making movies. It left the Virginia Truckee in 1946 and did about 100 movies since then. So we've drawn a building up to show you what it would look like. This will be the home in Virginia City. It'll house the Lightning Express train, or part of the Lightning Express train. They used to depart there every day with a 4-car train. My dad rode, and when he's 17, rode behind the Reno and the 27 on his last trip to Virginia City about 1938. And then we actually purchased the Reno on his 100th birthday to the day. So it's meant to be, and then it's going to be housed in Virginia City. We're working on it right now, just polishing it up for the display here. And we have a See the Reno site, a Patreon site, for this to help restore this locomotive.
I'm Keiji Muramoto.
And I'm Ken Muramoto.
Yeah, and we came here all the way from Santa Cruz just to be here for this event. And what exactly were you looking forward to seeing then?
I'm looking forward to taking a ride behind the Indian tomorrow.
I'm really excited just to see old friends and meet up with new ones and see a lot of steam engines that we hadn't seen we've always seen in pictures or movies or videos, but never in person. And so it's quite thrilling just to see. It's just thrilling just to hear the whistles, hear the bell, hear the bells rings, and it's wonderful. It's the whole thing. Yeah.
I'm Stoffy Pappas. I'm the owner of Santa Cruz Portland Cement No. 2, and we're here at Nevada State Railroad Museum, and they're doing their 150th anniversary of the Virginia Truckee Railroad and their 4th of July celebration. It's been 16 years since they've done a big 4th of July steam-up like they used to do. I remember being at that one back in 2006, actually, saying to myself, man, these are great events. Wouldn't it be cool to come back to the next one? So here we all are. Here's Southern Pacific 18 in the background backing into the depot. Another native son of the state of Nevada and railroading. Our locomotive, Santa Cruz Portland Cement No. 2, is actually the only non-Nevada engine at this event, believe it or not. They were kind enough to invite us to be part of it. What makes this event so unique and important, I think, is that it really is an homage and a tribute to the foundation and the opening of the Virginia Truckee Railroad. As many of you may already know, the V&T is a very special railroad in that so much of their early equipment survived into the preservation era. And so movie studios in the 1930s ended up buying a lot of it, and that saved it for future generations. So there are more Virginia Truckee locomotives at this event in one place than have ever been in one place since 1938. So this is a reunion sort of that railroad and its history, all these other engines that are part of the state of Nevada history, and then, of course, us on the side. We're here to sort of pay tribute to the great railroad history of the great state of Nevada, battle-born.
My name is Mike Hughes. I'm from Ely, Nevada. I do work out on the Nevada Northern, and the reason I'm here is just because partially it's nice to get out and just enjoy the trains for once, not have to deal with working on them. But at the same time, it's really cool to see this large collection of equipment here. Getting to see such a large collection of historic engines here, some which haven't seen each other in literal decades, is just very, very cool. And it's nice just to enjoy seeing them.
So hi, I'm Mike Ninneman. I'm a volunteer and employee at Railtown 1897 State Historic Park in Jamestown, California. So I'm handling the social media and interpretive work. At the same time I'm doing the rest of that, I'm also trying to stay active in all facets of the operation. It's easier to put together things like Facebook posts and newsletters when you know everything that's going on. For this weekend, I thought it would be great to come up here and see all the goings-on. And I have to say that in addition to all of this equipment, especially the Virginia and Truckee equipment that's here to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the completion of the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, it's fantastic really just to see the companionship and the camaraderie of all the people that came with the locomotives from all these different backgrounds, and just commingling and sharing information and having a good time. It's just wonderful to see this camaraderie. So above everything else, that's why I'm so glad to be here this weekend. So my name is Trevor Park. I am currently the operations supervisor of the Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad in Garibaldi, Oregon, which is in Tillamook County on the coast. Formerly a train crew member at Roaring Camp on both the narrow gauge Roaring Camp and Big Trees and Santa Cruz Big Trees and Pacific Standard Gauge. I was a fireman and conductor there. I came out here today to the Great Western Steam Up here in Carson City because this is probably the largest gathering of locomotives under fire that has happened in the 21st century. Many people here are saying the last great event was Rail Fair in 1999 in Sacramento. Well, I was born in 1999, so in my lifetime there has never been an event with this many steam locomotives in one place. So as someone who has grown up around steam locomotives and someone that has a great passion for steam locomotives, this is a pretty exciting event with a lot of different engines here, and not only a lot of different engines, but a lot of different people coming together from many different organizations to make this happen. The amount of people that you walk around and see who you've worked with before or you know from other railroads is staggering, and so being able to catch up with all the people, especially after not seeing them for multiple years because of COVID, and getting to all come together to make this great event happen is really a special experience.
Hi, I'm Taylor McCready. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. And this locomotive behind me is the Reno. It was built in 1872 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works. It was the Virginia Truckee Railroad's first true-bred passenger engine. A real big help in getting the information to get this thing was from the Southern Arizona Transportation Museum in Tucson, Arizona, specifically the director, Ken Carroll's. If it wasn't for all of us working together, this dream of the Reno returning back to Nevada would not have happened. This truly is a once-in-a-lifetime event where you can actually appreciate this massive collection of 19th century locomotives. Especially the Chiggen that's coming around and interrupting what I'm saying. The crew on that have done a wonderful job. The crews here are great.
Hello everyone, my name is Russell Moore. Behind me we have Virginia Truckee number 25. The 25 was built in 1905 as a 10-wheeler locomotive. It was originally built as a coal burner, which is why it has the big mechanics front end on it. But the V&T was getting all their coal from Australia, so it was a little too expensive for them. So in 1907, they sent it up to the SV shops in Sparks, had it converted to oil. When it was new, it spent about the first 15 years of its life in express passenger service, as well as just general mixed and freight service. As the fortunes of the V&T declined, the fortunes of kind of everything on the railroad went along with it, but the 25 was there the whole way. One of the distinctive events of this locomotive's history, it was the wrecking locomotive for the line up to Virginia City. It fell out of use in the mid-1940s, but since it fell out of use in the mid-1940s, it's been in really fantastic condition. So the Nevada State Railroad Museum acquired this in the mid-1970s and then restored it in 1980, and it's been our main excursion passenger locomotive here ever since. So it's a really reliable locomotive. As you can hear, the air pump just ticks away and it just boils water and it just works fantastic. It's got nice big tall drivers so it can get up to speed, but it's also got 6 of them so it can haul a heavy load. It's one of my personal favorite locomotives, and it's one of about a dozen locomotives here at the Great Western Steam Up. The Great Western Steam Up, we've been planning this for about a year and a half, and it's the greatest congregation of Virginia and Truckee locomotives since about 1938, when the V&T started selling off locomotives to the movie studios. The highlight for me is the fact that we were able to get the Genoa 440 built in 1873 and the J.W. Bowker, a 240 built in 1875, here from the California State Railroad Museum. We've been trying to get these locomotives here to NSRM for about 40 years, but through about a year's worth of hard work, we were able to negotiate it and get those 2 locomotives here for this great event. On top of those 2, we have a whole bunch of visiting locomotives. All of the other visiting engines are operable and are hot as we speak. So it's just really incredible to be around this many hot steam engines. It's just, you really don't see it anywhere else in the world. Alrighty everyone, here we are up in the cab of the 25. Here's the most glorious control of the whole thing. This is the throttle. Up here, nice long throttle lever for easy operation. Right here is our Johnson bar to control the forward and reversing direction. Over here, just behind the back head, we have one of two injectors on the locomotive. Like I said, this is the throttle. It makes you go, but how do you stop? Well, this right here is the independent brake. This is a unique brake valve. It's an A1 brake valve, and they used it for operating the flanger on the V&T because this was also the snowplow engine after about 1918. So the independent controls the brakes on the locomotive and tender. Then right below, we have the automatic brake stand, which controls your train brakes. Right here, we have our 3 tricocks that tell the water level. Then right here, we have the valve for the air pump. This one is for the dynamo, and this is called our hydrostatic lubricator. So this mixes steam and oil and sends it to both cylinders, but also the air pump.
Hi, my name's Ryan Blake. I'm the half owner of Virginia Truckee 24. Started this project in 2017 with the goal of making it a replica of the Virginia Truckee's inspection car. The original was built in 1923. You know, I always wanted to do a replica of something from the Virginia Truckee, and this was an easy one to do. So maybe I'll do another one, but got to find a 1917 white truck, and then I'll do another replica. I heard rumors about a big steam-up event for the Virginia Truckee's 150th about maybe 2 years ago, and I was like, okay, I gotta get this car done so I could have it at this event. And it's just a blast to see all these V&T locomotives here, all reunited again, and have my car here present for it all is really great. So I'm going to show how we start this car. There's 2 ways of starting it, one with the electric starter and then one with the crank at the front. So we'll start with the electric starter. Turn the ignition on, give it a little bit of gas, and then there's a button down here for the electric starter. The other way to start it is with the hand crank.
Hi, we're Jack and Jackie Burgess. Came here from Ardenwood Historic Railroad Museum to see what's going on, and it's impressive with all these engines together in one place. It's just mind-boggling, takes your breath away.
My name is Wendell Huffman. I am the retired curator of history here at the Nevada State Railroad Museum. And behind me is the locomotive Glenbrook, which was the first piece of railroad equipment that the state of Nevada owned. It was given to the state back in 1943. The locomotive was built in 1875 to operate on a railroad that ran between Glenbrook on the shore of Lake Tahoe up to Spooner Summit. There were 4 sawmills at Glenbrook, and this locomotive hauled train loads of cordwood for fuel and timbers for the mines up to Spooner Summit. It was floated in a flume from Spooner down to Carson City, actually to the property where we stand on. That operation ran from 1875 up through 1898. This locomotive and its sister, the Tahoe, which is also here today, worked on that railroad. The Tahoe was sold to the Nevada County Narrow Gauge. This locomotive was retained and was operated on the railroad that was built from Tahoe City up to Truckee as a narrow gauge railroad bringing tourists into Lake Tahoe. It operated up until 1925, and then the Bliss family that was involved in that logging operation, they hung on to it because they wanted to put it on display, but they couldn't figure out quite how to do that. And so in the 30s, 1937, they sold it to the Nevada County Narrow Gauge to be used as parts for the Tahoe. So it went to Grass Valley, but it wasn't used. It just sat there, and they'd take parts off it when they needed it. And then when that railroad was sold to the scrapper, this locomotive sat there. There was a fellow named Johnny Nolan who was the master mechanic, and he kept taking parts off its engine and burying them under his garage. And then in 1943, the daughter of Dwayne Bliss, who had run the lumber company, bought the engine from the scrapper. Nolan gave her the parts. The engine was brought up here to Carson City. And it sat around at the State Museum until the 80s, and it was brought here. And then finally, a few years ago, we restored it. So it didn't operate till 2015. So That's the story of the Glenbrook. It's really only been at Lake Tahoe here or in Grass Valley in its life. We're glad to have it. We're really glad to have the Tahoe here with it because this is the first time the two of them have been together since they were in Grass Valley. The event we're having today is called Steam Up, and it's the commemoration of the 150th anniversary of the completion of the Virginia Truckee Railroad between Reno and Carson City. We don't have something like this very often. It's fun to bring people onto the property. It's fun to get locomotives here from other places. This is the first thing like this we've had since 2006.
I'm Chris Baldo from Roots of Motive Power in Willits. We have a non-profit railroad museum and logging museum in Willits with quite a collection of equipment. And our big show is in September, weekend after Labor Day, but we like to bring some of our equipment to other places to let people know what we do in Willits. And so we started primarily as a logging museum, and so we collected a lot of early logging equipment. And one of the first pieces of steam logging equipment in the Redwoods was what was called the Dolbeer donkey. So John Dolbeer invented the logging donkey in something like 1883 or 4. And he basically adapted a marine type capstan winch, steam powered, for use in the woods. And these machines probably produce maybe 20-25 horsepower, so not big horsepower by today's standards. And they move the giant old growth redwood logs. And so the loggers had to use a lot of ingenuity and mechanical advantage with blocks and cables to move logs from the woods to a railroad landing, and then the logs would be put on railroad cars, which is part of the rest of the show today. Dolbeer donkeys were real popular because they were relatively inexpensive, and even as bigger donkeys were invented, Willamette and Washington both made huge steam donkeys, but these were popular for probably 50 years because they were cheap enough. You could bunch logs, you could have several of them, and you could bunch logs in groups, and then a more expensive yarder could move them to a railroad landing somewhere. The limitation of this kind of a donkey, because it's a capstan winch, is once you got more than 300 feet of line in a pile here on the ground, it became really time consuming to get the next log. So the spool tender was very careful to lay the rope, and the first donkeys used manila rope, and then later it was converted to cable. But you still had to lay it on the ground in these nice figure eights. So in the early days, they took a horse and you had to pull this back out in the woods to get for the next log. And then about 1899, someone decided instead of using a horse, we'll put a haulback drum on the donkey, which is, you can see that circular gear up there. That's a drum. It's called a haulback drum. And what it would do is, instead of using a horse, it would use a cable. And the cable would go out through a block in the woods, come back and hook to your main line, and that haulback drum would pull the main line back out to the next log. And so it saved this whole process of having a horse. And then it was the beginning of the idea. You still had this big mess of cable on the ground for the main line, and they soon figured out, well, why not have a haulback drum and a mainline drum, and then we could reach out way out there. And that's exactly what happened. The capstan donkey came into disuse, and the bigger donkeys were much more effective and efficient. Murray Brothers made that first series of capstan donkeys, and then this is made by a company in San Francisco called Marchutes and Cantrell that made small logging locomotives and donkeys. So this is another piece out of the Roots Motive Power collection in Willits. It's a hoisting engine that was used to load boats in Fort Bragg Harbor, in Fort Bragg, California Harbor. It helps people understand how steam engines produce usable power. And it's, you know, it's what we know, we burn wood and we boil water and we make steam, but it's how do you take that steam and actually use it for productive purposes. And that's so we tried to do a painted schematic of how steam engines work. This type of hoist does not have a boiler itself. It operates on piped steam, and normally the steam is admitted into the cylinders in the valve chest, and that's coated in yellow paint. And the reason there's a big yellow handle there, that actually is the reversing mechanism. So like a locomotive, the hoisting engine, you wanted to be able to raise material out of the hold of a boat, but you also wanted to be able to lower material into the hold of a boat without under some kind of control. So by reversing the engine, you could very carefully lower material into the hold. So it's a reversing engine, just like a locomotive. It has the reversing links, Stevenson reversing links. So by moving the lever, watch the drum. Sorry. So once the steam enters the red cylinders, the steam engines are double acting. And so what the yellow portion of the engine does is it alternates which end of the cylinder the steam is admitted to. So the steam pushes the piston to the left, and then the valve tells it to switch, and it pushes the piston to the right, and it back and forth, back and forth. And that's essentially what happens in a steam locomotive. But what you really want to do with a steam engine is to get some kind of rotary power. You really want something that turns rather than back and forth motion. You want rotary power, and that's what the blue part of the engine is for. The connecting rod hooks to the crank of the crankshaft, and it makes that linear motion into rotary motion. And that rotary motion is what ran the industrial might of America, because now you could have line shafts running machine shops, and you'd have fans and mining shaft, all kinds of things, and it's all because the steam engine, the power could be converted into rotary motion.
Yeah, I'm Dave Adams from San Jose, California, and I'm up here at the Carson City Railroad Museum for their big Great Western Steam Up. This event attracted me because of all of the locomotives they were going to have under steam this weekend, including a number of them I haven't seen before, so this is a real treat. So one of the things I wanted to see was SP number 18, the narrow gauge locomotive that's been restored and running for a few years now, so this is my first opportunity. The other thing that's pretty cool is this is the largest collection of V&T locomotives gathered in one spot since the railroad existed. There's only one or two absent, and one of them that's absent is up in Virginia City on display up there. Otherwise, pretty much they're all here, and it's just been a wonderful steam show. Lots of good people to talk to, and it's been worth every penny of it.
My name's Dave Mull. I'm the president of the Carson and Colorado Railway. We are the fellows that restored this old dog out of the park in Independence about 2017. We actually fired it up, moved it out of the park. This guy had sat in the park for 62 years. And how I got involved in it, I own an auto parts store, Lone Pine. Old gentleman wandered in there one day with a grease fitting off one of the side rods and threw it up on the counter. I said, what in the heck is that off of? He said, that locomotive in the park in Independence. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I've talked to the county. He says, I'm going to clean it up a little bit. It looks terrible. The thing's been out there. Birds have been crapping on it, been rusted. You know, it really needs some love. So I said, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to help you. So that gentleman and a couple of my friends, we started cleaning her up. The more things we took off of this guy, the side rods especially, pulled them off, they're dated 1953. This was retired in October of 54, put in the park in 55. So the more we pulled it apart, the more we said, why won't this thing run? Well, we got a few more people involved, Randy Babcock, Charlie Cross, and their friends that are all steam people involved. And the more things we took apart and fixed, the better it looked. So about 2015, we actually got an agreement with the county to restore this back to running order. And in 2016, we fired it in the park, backed it out on a short piece of track there, and had a little celebration. And then I built a big engine house up there to put it in, double stall, 50 by 75 building up in the back of the museum, and we put track down there. In 2017, we had our silver spike ceremony, and this gentleman over here loaned me a spike that he had gotten, a silver spike, and we pounded that in the ground. Not successfully, but we did pound it in. Anyway, that was how this ball got rolling. From there, more and more people wanted this locomotive to run in more than just one spot. So our friends in Colorado at the Durango and Silverton said, why not? Let's bring it back there and run it for a while. So we took it back for a summer and ran it. It performed fairly well. It had a few problems. We lost a piston there. We lost an air compressor there. But all this stuff got fixed back there. The next year, Randy Babcock, who's the chief mechanical officer there, calls me up and he goes, I don't want to have to ask this, but I'm going to. We need to use that locomotive for the Durango and Silverton. We have one locomotive that's converted to oil. They're requiring all of them to be converted to oil by the 1st of May. He said, I really don't want to do this, but can we lease it? Said we worked out an agreement, took it back there. It ran the entire summer, put 5,000 miles on it. Came back, and here we are. We were invited to this through Charlie Cross, who is another one of our chief mechanical officers there. Charlie said they've been working on this project for about 10 years. And this is the 150th anniversary of the Virginia Truckee. So anything that was involved with the V&T, our railroad, the Carson in Colorado, was built by the boys that owned the V&T. And it was built to get the silver out of Cerro Gordo, which is down by Lone Pine. And so they built the tracks all the way up over the hill and down there. The president got on there, Mr. Eureka, got on here, got off down there, and made the famous statement, we either built this 300 miles too long or 300 years too soon. And probably right. In a very short time, they decided that it really wasn't making the money they thought it would. They ended up selling it to Southern Pacific. The same month or within a month or so, they hit silver in Tonopah. The rails were already halfway to Tonopah. They laid them all the way, and they paid for the entire railroad in 1 year. So anyway, this is quite the event. There's more steam engines running here that are vintage than probably anywhere in the world right now. But a very nice project. These boys have gone all out. The Nevada State Railroad Museum paid for everything. They hauled it up here. They're paying for the fuel. They even supplied the guys with lunch and dinner last night. So this has been an awesome little deal.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm from Santa Cruz, but I worked at Roaring Camp Railroads in Felton, California as a conductor. And I also work currently up at Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad up in Tillamook, Oregon as a conductor there as well. But I'm excited about this event just because there's so many engines from a lot of them are pre-1900, and it's a wide variety of V&T engines as well, and they also have a Heisler, which you don't see very often, and one that looks good, which is very fun. But yeah, very exciting, lots of engines, lots of really old engines, and a lot of them are actually fired up, which is unique in itself. A lot of times you'll see static display or just display engines out and about, looking pretty but not actually running, but a lot of these ones are actually running and doing circles and hauling passengers, hauling cars. Yeah, it's really neat.
My name's Dan Markoff from Las Vegas, Nevada. I own the Eureka and Palisade locomotive number 4 Eureka. I've had it for 31 years. I restored it in my backyard in Las Vegas, Nevada. And it's proof positive that not all that glitters in Las Vegas is neon. Sometimes it's brass and iron and steel and a big, beautiful engine. The Eureka and Palisade ran here in Nevada from 1875 until 1901. It was then sold to the Sierra Nevada Lumber Company up at Lake Tahoe, where it ran until about 1939. It was then sent to the scrapyard to be cut up, but it was noticed by Gerald Best, who was a rail historian and a sound man at Warner Brothers Studios. So he notified them that the locomotive was available, and Warner Brothers Studios bought it. So off it went down to Hollywood, or more accurately Burbank, and was in many movies. After that, it was purchased by the old Tucson Corporation, and it went to Las Vegas, Nevada, at a place called Old Vegas, which was a very neat place, and they put it on static display there. Unfortunately, in 1985, there was a fire that happened, burned up a good portion of the property and the locomotive. I saw it in 1986 when my wife was dragging me to an arts and crafts fair out in Boulder City, Nevada. And I said, let's get a nice margarita. It's hot. And so we went back there and saw the engine. It was in a burnout shed that had collapsed on top of the locomotive. I asked the security guard how long it had been that way, and he said a year. Well, as fate would have it, a bell went off in my head, and I figured if nobody else cared for it, maybe I could do something with it. And so the next thing you know, I had a locomotive in my backyard, and I felt like the guy that shot an elk on a 10,000-foot peak. Now that you got it, what are you going to do with it? And I decided, well, I wasn't going to have America's largest dust collector in your backyard. So I set about restoring it, and I was able to find the original blueprints for the locomotive. And after that, it was like pouring water out of a boot. The directions are on the heel. And so I spent 6 years restoring it, got her licensed by the State of Nevada Boiler Inspectors and also by the Federal Railroad Administration. And we were able to take it to many railroads around the West, like the Durango and Silverton, the U.S. Gypsum Railroad, the Cumberson Toltec Railroad. This engine, over the last 31 years that I've had it, has climbed the Rocky Mountains many times, and been at many shows at the California State Railroad Museum here in Carson City and various other locations. It's been the adventure of a lifetime, and the people I've met as a result of being associated with this thing has been amazing. I've had shuttle command pilots come by the house to see it, including the head of NASA. And, you know, I love aviation. I'm a pilot. And even with those connections, I would have never had the opportunity to meet these guys. But here you are, because of an old locomotive. I got to meet the 20th and 21st century heroes. So, Eureka is listed on the National Historic Register as having been a significant part of contributing to the Western history. And we try to keep it alive out here. It's Nevada's history and America's history.
Hi, my name's Garrett Franklin. I'm here with the Santa Cruz and Portland Cement number 2, also known as the Chiggen. I'm from Railtown 1897. I started learning the wrench on those things volunteering there. I eventually got a paid position, and most recently I hired on with Stoffy Pappas at Fort Bragg, the California Western, also known as the Skunk Train. And so I'm here today with him, working on the Chiggen, practicing for future runs in Fort Bragg this August and September.
Hi, I'm Greg Robinson.
I'm Graham Robinson.
We are the father and son team who do Railroad Showcase. We used to do a weekly program on YouTube, but now this weekend we are here filming the official DVD for this event, and we are so excited. This is the most historic railroad event that has happened on the West Coast in years. There are more 19th century locomotives than you can shake a stick at.
It's going to be absolutely spectacular.
If you're curious about the program that we're putting out, you can find it at rrshowcase.com.
Of the completion of the V&T between the event that we're having today